Hello, Coach Boone. Thank you for meeting with me today before our 1 month psychological skills training program. Thank you for taking this time. I'm excited to work with you and the Titans in this next upcoming season. But to start, we're going to be looking at two moments in your last season when you guys went undefeated and won the championship game, where I saw you guys exerting or using psychological skills. First one being the perfection speech you gave after the first night of camp, when your team got into a brawl. So, you, in this perfection speech, you used goal setting, which is the psychological skill we're examining in this exact clip. So, you used goal setting to establish clear standards for your athletes. You clearly laid out the behaviors you expected from the team. You clearly laid out what you're going to accept and the consequences that follow from the stuff you're not accepting, like dropping the ball, they're going to have to run a mile. And throwing an interception, they're going to have to run a mile. Fumbling the ball, they're going to have to run a mile. You laid out performance and process goals for the players to follow during camp. And these performance and process goals were not only laid out with the intent to set the standards for the program, but they were laid out to change the behavior that your athletes had towards the opposing race. Because your school was dealing with integrating black and white people, and you had to deal with integrating them onto the same field under the same jersey, with the same mascot, same goal. So you had to set some. And here's the thing though, it worked. And as the season went on, the athletes bought into it, held each other accountable, and showed that during halftime of the championship. I think that is the most clear indicator of your goal setting working. When you went into that locker room during the halftime of the championship game, losing, you were not demanding perfection. You were talking about how all of your players have come so far, they've done so much, no matter what the outcome of the game is, they're still winners in your eyes. And one of your star players, Julius Campbell, stepped up and told you how that's not true. Because at the start of the season, you set some goals. They were not going to give up during halftime of the final game of the year when they had been perfect in every single game prior. In their mind, perfect, their words. Because they went undefeated. They weren't going to lose this game. They weren't going to lose that streak. Yeah, you guys lost Bertier, one of your best defensive players, due to a car crash the week before the championship game. So what? You got the rest of the roster. So even when you weren't demanding perfection during your championship halftime speech, your athletes were self-directed, resilient, and committed to the performance standards you had instilled. Your goal setting shaped the team's motivation, behavior, and led to overwhelming success. So, when looking at a study that was conducted by Karsten Larsen, it looked at the effects and benefits a goal setting program had on the development and learning of a professional football player, both in training and competition. But at the end, they had concluded that the art of goal setting is dynamic, ever-changing, complex, and must be flexible to work because players have different problems and personalities which should be handled in appropriate and sometimes different ways. Which really leads into the next clip I wanted to talk about from your past season, where during your guys' first game, your running back misses a blocking assignment, gets over-aroused, and the psychological skill in use is arousal regulation. But very poorly from you, Coach Boone, but incredibly from Coach Yost. So Petey, he makes a mistake. He misses a block. And when he comes over to the sideline, you start digging into him. This leads to him getting over-aroused. He can't even answer if he wants to play football to you. You bench him, and he doesn't, and then he wants nothing else to do with you. Coach Yost, he seizes this and uses arousal regulation to decrease Petey's arousal, because he's clearly over-aroused, decreases his arousal, and then is able to ask him to come in and play for defense, because one of the receivers, he's killing your guy's defender. So he's thinking, okay, maybe if he's not able to play running back on offense, I can get him in on defense. Like Petey brings up, he has had 0 reps with the defense, and despite this, Yost is able to calm him down to an optimal level to get him to sub into defense, and not only sub into defense, but to make game-altering plays despite the lack of practice. So, the way you influence an athlete's arousal is going to affect their performance. And one way to do so is to build a stronger coach and athlete relationship. I'm sorry, I keep messing this up. Okay, so according to a study done by Davis L., they found that athletes who had a strong coach-athlete relationship had better cognitive performance, viewed higher demand tasks as less stressful, and were able to exercise longer before exhaustion. These are all things that we really want to see out of our athletes. We want to see them being able to make better decisions. We want them to not be as stressed out in high-stress situations, and we want them to be able to exercise longer before exhaustion. If they're able to exercise longer before exhaustion than the opposing team, holy crap, we've got a very good chance to win that game. And then in another study, this one conducted by Gomes, they saw that athletes who perceived the situation as a challenge reported higher coping and control perceptions and had more positive emotions, whereas athletes who perceived the situation as a threat were reporting lower perceptions of coping and control and experienced more negative emotions. So Coach Boone, what you need to build a stronger coach-athlete relationship so you can then be able to help your players perceive the situation as more of a challenge and a threat, and you can help facilitate more positive emotions in your athletes. And so why this matters, going back to PD situation. When you yelled at him, yeah, you had been treating everyone on your team the same, yelling at everyone, but not everyone's the same. And when it came to PD, the yelling over-aroused him, impaired his focus and decision-making, and this made him perceive the situation that he was in as more of a threat than a challenge, hurting his performance. But then we see Coach Yost, his calm and supportive approach, help PD achieve an optimal arousal state and allow him to be able to come into a completely different side of the ball and make game-altering plays. This is why I am going to be focusing the 1-month psychological skills training program on arousal regulation. I believe, Coach Boone, that you could improve your arousal regulation, and if we do so, not only could we go back-to-back championships, I think we could potentially go back-to-back undefeated seasons. So, for the training plan, I've developed a program that's going to strengthen your ability to regulate your players' arousal levels in high-pressure moments. And as we saw in the team's first game, we saw what the negative effect of over-arousal can do, and then we also saw from Coach Yost what effective arousal regulation can do. So this program is going to provide Coach Boone and the rest of your coaching staff with the tools to consistently bring athletes into their individual zones of optimal functioning. This is because research shows that the ideal arousal state for every athlete is different, and the IZOF model helps to identify those individual zones. I will be referring to individual zones of optimal functioning as IZOF for the rest of this presentation, so you guys know. So, there will be 4 weeks. Each week is going to consist of 3 sessions. So for week 1, research shows that strong and supportive coaching behaviors encourage athletes to use better coping strategies, increase intensity of physical activity, and facilitate sport satisfaction and goal attainment. So for this week, the goal of the first week is going to be to educate you and your staff on arousal, how coaching behaviors influence it, and how players differ in their optimal arousal levels. So, session 1, this is going to be done individually before practice. Arousal education. We're going to explain arousal, stress responses, the inverted U relationship, the IZOF model I brought up, and the catastrophe theory to you. We're going to discuss what alters athlete arousal, and then we're going to go back and look at the first game and how PD was performing before and after the substitution. Session 2, done with the team after practice, we're going to introduce the team to arousal. We're going to teach some key words to players to describe their arousal levels to get a common vocabulary, and then we're going to have the players complete a questionnaire on arousal, asking about their triggers of over-arousal, their common cues, and ideal intensity before a competition. Now, session 3 of week 1, and this is going to be done by yourself, but during practice, we're going to have you do some observation training. I want you to learn to identify behavioral markers of over-arousal, like rigid posture, rushed speech, avoiding eye contact, and irritability. And then you're going to record players exerting markers of over-arousal, and, of course, mark down the markers of over-arousal, too. Now, for week 2, the goal of this week is going to be to teach you and your coaching staff specific strategies to regulate arousal in athletes. Session 1, going to be done by yourself. Practice, you're just going to practice some regulation techniques. I'm going to teach you breath control, progressive relaxation, and imagery, and you're going to then learn to and practice delivering them in a way that doesn't escalate athlete anxiety. Then for the second session of week 2, this is going to be done with the team after practice, and we're going to do some player arousal skill training. We're going to teach players skills to lower their arousal and increase their arousal. Pretty simple. And then for session 3 of week 2, this will be done by yourself before practice. you're going to practice some communication strategies, and I want you to work on lowering your volume and slowing down your speech when athletes are frantic, maintaining eye contact and relaxed posture, using instructional feedback instead of emotional feedback, and then I want you to redirect mistakes without the use of personal criticism. Now, going into week 3. The goal for this week is going to be to help you, Coach Boone, practice arousal regulation in practice scenarios. So, session 1, done by yourself before practice. We're going to do some real-time scenario rehearsal. I'm going to be giving you some mock situations where a player is over or under aroused, and you're going to have to figure out how to deal with that specific player in that specific situation. Session 2, this will be done with the team during practice, and we're going to have some live implementation. Athletes, we're going to be putting them through high-pressure drills with the goal of recreating game-like stress. And while under these game-like stress, Coach, you're going to have to use arousal regulation to help athletes out as they need it. And then for session 3, week 3, this will be done with the team after practice, and this is going to just be some reflection and reinforcement. We're going to have the athletes report back to whether or not they viewed your arousal regulation as helpful or not, and then Coach Boone, we're going to have you reflect on moments where you wish you would have done things differently. So, going into the final week of this program, the goal for the final week is going to be to transfer your new skills to game-like situations. So in session 1, this is going to be done with the team during practice. We're going to have a game simulation via a scrimmage. And so you're just going to be using arousal regulation skills during this scrimmage as it's needed. If a player is getting over aroused and you have a situation like PD had, you're going to have to handle it a little differently. So, yeah. And then going into session 2, week 4, this is going to be done individually outside practice. We're going to be having some personalized arousal plans for key players made by you. So just like PD, he needed calming rather than yelling, I want you to make profiles for people who, for the players that are opposite of the way you coach, how you're a little more intense and yelling. The players who are like PD, I want you to make some specific plans or profiles. And I want you to find out what triggers each player, how they show over arousal, and find out the best calming or activation cues for them specifically. Then, for the final session of this program, this is going to be done with the team but before a game. And what I want is to set up an arousal reset routine to be used on game days. So it's going to start with a 2-minute breathing routine that's going to lead into warm-up. Then, while the players are warming up, Coach Boone, you're going to start observing your players every single time and helping people out with their arousal their arousal as you deem fit. And then, depending on how most players are feeling, you can adjust the warm-up intensity for arousal regulation. So now, after this program has ended, Coach Boone, I'm going to have you reflect on your growth, how your athletes have improved, and how you plan to maintain these skills throughout the following seasons. And then, while this program is going on, I'm going to be evaluating it, because we need to make sure it's working. I'm going to be looking at behavioral indicators, psychological indicators, and performance indicators. Behavioral indicators being things like athletes being consistently more confident, seeing a reduction in side-light outburst. I'm going to be measuring psychological indicators with because I'm going to be having your players rate their arousal before and after each practice every single week. And then Coach Boone, you're going to be completing weekly self-evals as well. And then I'll be looking for performance indicators. I'm going to be looking at seeing more successful transitions after mistakes have been made, fewer blown assignments due to panic, and then just seeing an increased trust between you and your players. Thank you for your time. Any research I talked about, here's the references. And again, thank you for your time, and I cannot wait to work with you in the Titans in this upcoming season.